hiker's going to tell us about this.
Oh, cool. So this is the first time I've told the story, so it's not going to be good.
You're going to do just fine.
So, of course, how this site is advertised and what everyone always sees is this panel, which dates to the Basket Maker 2 period, which is roughly that period. The early date keeps going backwards because we keep finding early corn dates, but we'll say 500 BC to roughly 580. And this is when Native American people who lived basically in the Southwest, particularly this area of the Southwest, started to adopt agriculture more and more, so that they basically became farmers rather than very mobile hunting and gathering. So some of these images, particularly the red figure, that's very obvious. This yellow figure with the ear bobs, fairly typical of Basket Maker 2 style imagery. So that's what everyone sees. The other thing that this alcove has, or had, was storage. So lots of these slab-lined rocks that you see used to be slab-lined storage cysts, which you basically make a rock slab, you mud it up, and then you put a covering over it, and you can store corn, and that kept the rodents out. So there were several storage cysts here. When the site was initially found, it was relatively around the same time, 1965, when this site had been heavily looted. And then it was heavily looted again. And then shortly after, this fence came up. It was like twice as tall and barbed wire, and you couldn't get people in, and then that got switched. And then in the 80s, someone came and did some major looting again. And there's been, and in the 80s when the looting was there, a bunch of stuff from those lootings got collected by the archaeologists, but we've never had any formal excavations in here. So what's under this sand completely, we don't really know. But some of the things that the archaeologist found in the 80s when he was cleaning up the site, corn, obviously, corn seeds, squash seeds, rabbit fur, some sort of hair. I didn't really read what that was. What else? Timbers from the cysts. So basically, once you have the rock slabs, to create the roof, you use timbers, and then you mud that up, and then you put a rock slab over the top, so you basically have a doorway to kind of get in there. Those, I think, between the timbers and the corn, the date on this site was somewhere around 200 KD, and I think the span of the dates were for several hundred years. So basically, this site was actually used for multiple hundreds of years, mainly from storage. No ceramics were found here. So this was all pre-ceramic agriculture. So that's the earliest agriculture that happened here, was the transition, and that's kind of where that basket maker name comes from. It is that they were using baskets still and not ceramics yet. So lots of people, when they see all this imagery, they're like, what does it mean? And most archaeologists, like almost all of us, don't know. And in some places that you'll go to, you might see something that says, we'll never know what this means, which is totally inaccurate, I think, because if you talk to Native American elders, particularly elders who are associated with the groups that made these, so here probably Hopi, various other Pueblos in the Southwest, the Zuni. Some of the elders, they might be able to come out here and recognize some of what's on here. And from what I've talked to elders, knowing the oral history of the tribes is one of the ways that they're able to interpret these things. And sometimes when they come, it's clear as day what it means. Sometimes it takes them several visits to understand it, and sometimes they don't understand it. So I think there are Native Americans in the Southwest that probably know what it means, and of course, they have no reason to tell us what it is. Some of them will share, but yeah, I have been in this position 2 years. I plan to be here for 20. So hopefully by the time I leave, I'll have a better understanding of this and get some tribal members here to look at it. But when you look at imagery, so usually you'll hear it called rock art. And one of the things that archaeologists and native peoples want to make very clear is that it is a lot more than art. It's very purposeful. So the way that everything is put on the wall is done in purpose. The colors are purposeful. It's not graffiti. People who say it's graffiti or vandalism is basically people who think in Western culture, but when you think in Native American cultures, they have respects for everything, so rocks, trees, dirt, they believe are more or less alive, and if I might incorrectly say some stuff about Native American groups, but so don't take what I say as gospel, because there are lots of tribes and tribes think differently, but generally, there is a respect for everything around them, and that came from the fact that when you look prior to European, immigration, migration into the Americas, everything that we see had a purpose and a use for these people. So if you look at Gamble Oak, the main oak behind us, they have acorns. You can use those acorns for food. The trees you can burn for fuel. You can use the timbers to make your structures. These rocks you can use to make structures. You can use rocks to make tools. You can use clay to make pottery. You can use plants to make basketry. Plants, yucca up there is a great plant. It makes fibers, so you can make cordage, you can make baskets, you can make sandals. The roots, you can make soap. So basically everything has a purpose and has a use. So Native Americans, particularly when this was made, they respected everything around them. And so this was very intentional. This is mostly people, which is kind of odd because most of our panels are usually more animal figures, but this one's mainly people figures. But you can kind of see, we'll say this is kind of sheep-like. So usually things that people see as sheep, people interpret as sheep, which if it's one sheep, that might be the case. If you have multiple sheep, it might actually be talking about a direction or a migration in a direction. So basically, a symbol by itself might mean one thing, symbols all together mean totally something different. So basically, if you want to know what each thing means, that's not really how I think these are interpreted. It's basically the whole thing. And more importantly than just the images you see, it's also the place that it occurs. So basically this alcove was important. The fact that they were storing corn and squash is important. This canyon is important. The trees around here are important. When you're up higher and you look around, you can kind of see seeps all along the canyon side that are kind of near this same level. They might be actually a little bit lower. But this is one of the few dry alcoves here. So I think the water, because if you go further, there's actually a seep just like 100 meters or so that way. So the fact that that water source is there was probably an important reason for this being here. The Southern Paiute didn't get horses until really late. The Ute got horses at some point, and if you go into northern Utah, You will see imagery with horses on it, particularly Vernal, Book Cliffs, Ouray area, Duchesne. There's horses out there, but yeah, in this part of the world, the Native Americans really didn't adopt horses until maybe the 1800s, and the only horses, I mean, you did have the Navajo coming through from the east.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.